worked out. The timing was awesome. So thank you again. Do we start?
Do it.
Hi, good morning. What's that?
Hey, Matt.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for joining us today for our San Antonio Startup Week panel, The Rise of Robotics in the Alamo City. I am Stephanie Garcia with Port San Antonio, and I'm joined today by the SATX Robotics Steering Committee, Shaun Edwards with +1 Robotics. Hey, Shaun. Michael Blanton Jr. with Renu Robotics, Mike Henry with First Robotics, Kris Kozak with Hatchbed, and Matt Robinson with Southwest Research Institute. So if you haven't heard of SATX Robotics, we are San Antonio's first robotics meetup group. We've been around for 2 years now, and we've seen some really outstanding presentations over those 2 years, from Reckon Point's Migsu to the coronavirus killing robot from Xyrec to the solar powered lawn mowing robot from Renu Robotics. We've seen so many great things happening, and we've even invited our local high schools out to demonstrate their technology and give presentations, because the robotics industry is very much interested in seeing what the kids are up to. So whether you're a mature organization who's been known for their robotics work in San Antonio, like Southwest Research Institute, or you're one of the robotics startups that's flourishing here at Port San Antonio, it is becoming very clear that that San Antonio is becoming a center for robotics. So before we get into our panel discussion today, I just wanted to welcome a very special guest who's with us this morning. He is in town from the Netherlands. It's Mr. Peter Boeijink. Did I say that right? CEO of Xyrec. Xyrec just announced last week that they've made San Antonio their North American headquarters, and we're so happy that you're with us today. Thank you again for joining us. Jim Perschbach and I were out at your facility earlier this week, and I have to say that's a pretty tall drink of water that you have in that robot warehouse. So why don't you tell us about your technology and why you chose San Antonio as your North American headquarters?
Yeah, so thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very enthusiastic about being part of a community here in San Antonio. I remember last year I was in the city, also visiting a meeting there, and people telling about their initiatives on robotics in San Antonio. And I'm very happy to announce to you that Xyrec decided to have their headquarters in San Antonio. Xyrec is a Dutch company. They have an American daughter company, Xyrec Incorporated, and will be running from here our expansion into the North American market. We have two things we're going to do here. The first thing is we continue to develop our robot technology in cooperation with Southwest Research Institute. And secondly, we are assembling robots here for the North American market. The first robot is just ready. You are welcome to see it yourself, but maybe you saw a video last week and this week on KSAT. It's a very small robot. It can handle very small aircraft. No, I'm joking. It's a huge robot. And that it is huge is because aircrafts are huge. That's the only reason why it is huge. We had no intention to make huge robots or small robots, or doesn't matter what size. It is huge because it is meant to do outside of the aircraft, the stripping of paint, and very near from now we will have the paint robots available. So that means that we are going to expand the whole area of aircraft maintenance. And when people ask me, Peter, what is your vision then? The vision is that we will have robotized hangars for maintenance of aircraft, doing all the stuff which is dangerous for people, bad for the environment, and making, of course, a very efficient process which takes care of cost reduction or in the aerospace market. That all combined is very attractive for Xyrec to invest heavily. We have invested heavily the last 5 years, and we will invest heavily the coming years. And we talk about tens of millions we are investing, and with the aim to be a leader in the worldwide global aerospace market for robotics. And people ask me then, is that your vision? You want to have robots for the aerospace market? I said, oh, when you look at the market demand, you can easily think about using the same technology for marine market, for ships, or for trains, or for anything what else is big and needs to paint and repaint. We think that our technology will be continue to develop. We talk now about stripping and painting, but what about inspection technology? What about new technologies to reduce fuel use by aircraft? All this is coming up, and San Antonio will, for us, the base for development, will be the base for expansion. And I hope actually by this initiative in San Antonio, we are getting a lot of other companies also supplying to us. But maybe there are crazy wild ideas here in San Antonio available, and we would love to work together and get those initiatives into a maturity state that we can support it as Xyrec, and we can give you the opportunity to expand that initiative to a real market and making business with that. So big chance to have this eco-structure near San Antonio up and running. Nice initiatives on the board to have an innovation center upcoming. The picture is on your back there. It's exactly what you need. And my vision is that in 5 years from now, we have 100 companies in robotics around this innovation center. Xyrec supports those companies and work together. And we have the stronghold in the world on robotics and innovation on that. And Southwest Research, don't forget Southwest Research. Matt is on industry, also on the Zoom call. Matt and I worked together the last couple of years, and we are continuing that development. So Southwest, Xyrec, and all the other companies I see already here in the Zoom call, we can work together and we can make it bigger and bigger and helping each other.
Well, thank you, Peter. That's so exciting. And we just, again, want to welcome you to the robotics ecosystem that we have here in San Antonio, which is so diverse. And again, we're just so excited that you're here, and thank you very much for joining us today again. So now that we're talking about the robotics ecosystem, I think that we should all just talk about how we fit into that robotics ecosystem. And I'll go ahead and start by talking about Port San Antonio. So if you haven't heard the news lately, Port San Antonio's board of directors approved our innovation center, the funding for the innovation center, and we should be breaking ground, any day now, something that we're really excited about. And what's going to make this innovation center special is that it's going to connect people with opportunities, employers with education, and buyers with sellers. We really think that this building with its components, the tech arena, the industry showroom, the San Antonio Museum of Science and Technology, as well as a makerspace, it's really going to spark that collaboration between industries. And that's actually something that we're already seeing here on the campus between our customers within robotics, cybersecurity, and aerospace. So that's just a little bit about our innovation center. And I want to kind of kick this over to Matt for you to talk about Southwest Research Institute and the role that it's played for many, many years, and not only in robotics, but so many other stuff that I'm not well equipped to talk about. But I wanted to start with you because we do have several alums within our robotics group from Southwest Research Institute.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, so my name is Matt Robinson. I'm at Southwest Research Institute. I came down from Caterpillar's corporate research up in Illinois. I got enticed because of the work of the particular department within Southwest Research Institute, the Manufacturing Robotics and Technologies department. It was doing in open source, actually, right? And then that's sort of been helping to facilitate basically more of a broader outreach, not just initially global and what we're trying to do with other partners to democratize some of the siloing effects that happens in technology development that really plagued and gave us a lot of challenges during my time in industry. But that's also now is a great vehicle to enable us to be a tighter part of the community. I want to echo what Peter said. When we gather around in certain, be they innovation centers or even when it's just our SATX Robotix meetups, we're very excited to really take a lot of the things we're doing and to impact the globe and the technology development we do across the Institute, from things around cybersecurity, yet leveraging artificial intelligence to drive innovative medical treatments, to obviously unmanned ground vehicles and using drone technology to do inspections in hazardous areas, as well as then innovating in how to do manufacturing processes in new and novel ways, right? To capture the dull, dangerous, and dirty, the 3Ds that plague manufacturing, right? To drive new types of businesses and new types of jobs to support, right? You know, when Peter talks about his technology and the business that he's building, right? That's a whole new class of jobs, right? So, and we don't often talk about that. A lot of people tend to obsess about automation taking jobs, but there's all this new job creation. So it's exciting to be part of that. You know, in my role, I came here to steward an open source project, Ross Industrial, which was started by Shaun and some of his peers in my department back in the early 2010s. And so I'm happy to carry that and then try to bring it here into San Antonio, put a face to it. You know, obviously the work we do in the open source community globally is really exciting, but a lot of times it's interaction over computers and written content or source code. The benefit we have here is to like, hey, let's take this work we're doing and put faces to it. And it can be more impactful, right? Because we can share the work we're doing, right? We can provide working examples that people can use and experiment with, provide feedback on. And of course, you know, once we all know each other through the networking and collaboration through events like this, right? We can actually continue to foster and build the community around us. And that includes down through, you know, the activities that, like, say, FIRST is engaged in, when we talk about getting young people excited about robotics, right? And then of course, working with our university and educational partners here in the region to kind of build that talent pipeline. And of course, obviously with the growth and all the robotics activity, they'll have a reason to stay. And we're excited to kind of be part of that. I mean, right, working with our educational partners and supporting the talent pipeline to build that rich community that we all want to see here. And so we're excited to the work that we do. We're excited to share what we can via our open source initiatives and projects, and obviously be part of the community as far as putting faces to that work we do.
Thank you, Matt. Shaun, you want to go ahead and share with us your role in our robotics ecosystem?
Sure. So yeah, as Matt said, I got started or really got made my impact in robotics in open source development at Southwest Research Institute, which was a great opportunity. But at some point, I decided I wanted to have kind of a business-focused impact and a more local impact. The great thing about open source is it was a global thing, but starting a company locally, Plus One Robotics, within San Antonio was a great way for me to feel like I'm having an immediate local impact in San Antonio. And the work that we do is deploying robotics in logistics and e-commerce applications. And that is simultaneously a very advanced technology, and it takes everything from, you know, AI to cloud development, but it is also a kind of hardware-based technology. And so it takes people with skills like electricians and riggers to pull systems together and actually install them. And so, you know, one of my impacts in my role in this ecosystem is just to build a company that has that diverse skill set, and try as much as we can to source that those skill sets locally. And that's something we've done as a company, but not as good as I want. So the other role that I play is kind of like Matt said, is on the educational side and building up our workforce. And, you know, over the past few years, I've focused a lot on talking with our university partners and getting them excited about robotics and the skills that we need within robotics. And just recently, we started working at a high school level. So we have 2 high school interns from Cass Tech High School, and they're doing quality assurance on our software. And we're very excited that at that young age, they're gaining the skills that we as a company and we as an ecosystem all need. And so, you know, those are the 2 things that I think I bring to the ecosystem.
Very cool. Michael Blanton Jr., Renu Robotics.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So we're a local startup here, been in operation for a little over a year now, and we've really been able to leverage the technology capabilities that are in San Antonio. So having come out of Southwest Research Institute, actually out of Matt's group, having worked with Shaun, the interactions within the a very small robotics community were pretty well known. So we're trying to develop even more capability in robotics throughout the community for companies like Xyrec, for companies like Plus One, and even for Southwest Research Institute, working through educational systems to build that community here and to reach out to relationships beyond San Antonio in the Central Texas I-35 corridor as well. So we're seeing relationships being built with the government through the corridor. And right now, I'm out in Virginia deploying bots out on a solar field. I can show you real quick some of the bots.
Oh my God, that's
They're
so
currently
cool.
being set up, and the autonomous bots mow. They were designed to mow out in solar fields. But all this capability to be able to build ground autonomous vehicles was really enabled because of the ecosystem that has been established in San Antonio. So the experience and the capabilities that Southwest Research helped to foster and enable, the open source technology push that Shaun put forward has really helped push his company forward, but it also has enabled us to move forward as well. Cooperative agreements, work with people like Kris Kozak from Hatchbed and his group of highly capable autonomous engineers and software developers there have really helped to enable companies all throughout San Antonio to push forward and push technology out there faster to really establish us as a robotics hub within not just the US market, but the global market as well. So we're starting to have conversations within our organization, not just within the US market, but globally. So the need to mow vegetation on solar sites and just on any kind of open area, government institutions, anywhere that you have to mow grass, there's interest in automation hitting that. So we're making connections from San Antonio out to the world, and all that's really being enabled because of the technology hub that has been established here in San Antonio. And we see Port SA playing a really big part of that as well. The push for that impetus that Stephanie and the team there at Port SA are really enabling a local hub for companies to come together and see that there's not just individual organizations that are interested in this, but there's also a government interest in pushing this technology and pushing the capabilities of robotics here, which overall will establish great jobs, push the economy up, and just make the capability of bringing more talent to this area and establishing it as a stronger robotics hub as we move forward through the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to go over to you, Kris Kozak with Hatchbed, one of the robotics startups that we have here at Port San Antonio.
Thanks, Stephanie. So Hatchbed is a relatively new company here in San Antonio. We started in February of 2019, so we're just over a year and a half old. And Stephanie mentioned the number of alums from Southwest Research. I came out of Southwest Research. My partner, Mark Albin, came out of Southwest Research, and our first full-time employee also from Southwest Research. So we have some deep ties there. But our company is basically what you might call a boutique consulting company in robotics. We have combined over 40 years of experience. My background includes, traditional industrial robotics, plus some interesting, very specialized robotics. And for the past, I guess now almost 15 years, I've focused largely on autonomous vehicles, so self-driving cars, self-driving vehicles. But since we started this company, Hatchbed, we've been able to really be responsive to the specific needs of industry, not just here. So Michael mentioned, some of the help that we've been giving them, but not just here in San Antonio, but around the country, basically providing specialized and a depth of experience that can be brought to a range of challenging problems. So in the short time that we've been operating, we've worked on basically self-driving vehicles. We've worked on industrial robots. We've worked on highly specialized sensing systems. We've also worked on drones and boats. So that it's kind of run the gamut. And what I like to think that we bring to the mix here in San Antonio is sort of an ability to bring those many years of experience to apply to challenging problems. I mean, one of the short-term, hopefully, problems facing the robotics community here is that we just don't have quite the stable of experienced roboticists, software developers. I mean, there's a lot of good talent here in San Antonio, but when you compare to some of the other centers around the country, whether it's Pittsburgh or Silicon Valley or the Denver area, it's just not quite the same. So I like to think that we're able to fill some of those gaps, both here and really elsewhere. And so basically, this sort of started out as a bit of an experiment. I mean, it was partially out of necessity, but my hope was to be able to continue doing robotics here in San Antonio. As many might know, robotics in general is kind of blowing up around the country, around the world. So it's not that hard to find a good job, great job, if you will, but not always where you want it. So, if you want to move to Silicon Valley or San Francisco or Pittsburgh, there are lots of opportunities there. So we were kind of hoping that we could make this work here in San Antonio. And so far it's been going quite well. We hope that the trajectory continues, and hey, if we can have 100 robotics companies here and in the next several years, that would be amazing. But for now, I like to think that we're doing okay. So thank you.
I know you guys are. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Mike Henry, you're a senior mentor for First Robotics. So I know several, I think all of them pretty much mentioned getting kids excited for careers in STEM, careers in robots. So just tell us about, the educational programs that First has for our future engineers and roboticists and scientists. And what do we have for the future?
So thank you, Stephanie. And yes, my name's Mike Henry, and I wear a couple of different hats for First, but I think I'll start by saying that First is a robotics community that aims to involve young people or get young people ready for the future. We have a lot of programs that are designed to do that in the schools, and basically our programs go from pre-kindergarten up to the 12th grade. So we have literally everything from from age 4 or 5 up to 18, and number of programs there. First is not only a nationwide, but actually a worldwide organization. I do want to mention that one of my favorite teams that I got to meet several years ago is a team from the Netherlands, and I wanted to make sure and mention that to Peter. They are their team is it's Team Rembrandt, and they're always decked out in orange, and they look just awesome, and they're great representatives for the Netherlands because they are a world champion team. And in fact, the last time I saw them, that was their what they were able to accomplish. And it's just amazing to me to work for an organization that has that kind of reach and a worldwide presence. But in San Antonio, First has actually been here, at least started here in about 2000, and slowly grew until the local First leadership decided that we wanted to bring First here in a big way. And so to do that, we started championships in some of our younger programs, first Lego League, and then also what is called First Tech Challenge. And we had those events here in the 2009, 2010 period. And then we started with the big robotics program, bringing what was then an Alamo regional event here. And we would draw somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people at the convention center, and we ran all the programs at once. And we had teams that were coming from literally around the world to San Antonio. It fit with our mission of what we wanted to do here, which was to be able to make San Antonio, or to help San Antonio be that technology hub that I've heard mentioned here. We thought we could get San Antonio noticed. No one thinks of San Antonio as a tech community. They didn't in 2009 for sure, I don't believe. And so we were able through FIRST to say, hey, we've got a lot of kids here who can build some very good robots, and that's what these kids have done and accomplished. I'm just really glad to be a part of this panel, and thank you so much, Stephanie. I'll get off now.
Thank you, Mike. And it's so great to hear all the things that FIRST is doing to get kids excited about careers in robotics. So speaking of careers, Shaun, I wanted to ask you, we'll start with you, what the economic impact the robotics industry is having on San Antonio.
Yeah, so I'll speak from a +1 perspective. We've been a startup. We started three years ago. We went from 3 people in a warehouse next to what felt like a train station, because all the trains that would go by, to 40+ people in a brand new office at Port San Antonio. So when I like to think about our economic impact, it really is in the number of people. There's also kind of another economic impact that others kind of remind me of, which is we're a startup, we're VC funded. That means we brought investor dollars into the San Antonio community, just like Peter was talking about, the amount of money that they brought into the community. And so from +1, we brought in $10+ million in VC investment, and that, the majority of that came from outside of San Antonio. So we're building the San Antonio robotics ecosystem, but we're also bringing money and economic impact into San Antonio.
Awesome, thank you for that. So Michael Blanton, yesterday we did, and I know I think you all had mentioned this earlier, but you had mentioned some collaborations that were going around in and around the region that is really, helping San Antonio become a robotics hub. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, sure. So, the efforts at Renu Robotics are on a global scale is what we're really shooting for. But being a startup right now, we have to collaborate. So there's, we're under a lot of NDAs right now. So there's a lot of names that I can't mention. But we are talking with companies and governments and organizations around the world right now for deploying these robots, which is really speaking to the impact of taking the technology and capabilities that are here in San Antonio and seeing where that can reach out globally, right? So there are currently partnerships that we're talking about overseas for working with larger corporations that are very interested in the technology that we have developed here in San Antonio that they just haven't been able to develop on their own in those areas. They see the great economic impact that automating maintenance of vegetation can bring. So a lot of times it's not, when you look at mowing industry on an industrial scale, a lot of times that's not a very pleasant job for a person to work. So it just kind of begs for automation in that aspect. The same as, similar to what Plus One did with moving packages, right? That's a pretty boring job, just sitting there cycling packages around. And so, letting a robot do that and just having someone oversee that is a great opportunity. That same opportunity exists with mowing, but on an industrial scale, it takes a level of extra capabilities within autonomy, because you're not just mowing a big open field, you're working around infrastructure, and it's critical infrastructure that if you damage it, can take down a power grid for a little while, right? So you want to make sure that your systems are at the highest level of autonomous capability as possible to make sure that it's safe and secure. You want to be able to secure that so that it can't be hacked. You want to make sure that it's not going to damage anything. And so that is helping to, that need that has become apparent now to, organizations around the world have seen that capability that we've developed here in San Antonio and are seeking partnerships with us right now in that. There's also a very large connected autonomy ecosystem that's being researched and developed up at Camp Mabry right now. They're trying to establish that as a hub for automation and connectedness. So we are currently talking with organizations there about getting engaged with autonomous operations out there as well. And so they're seeing the capabilities that have been enabled here in San Antonio. A lot of that was established through groundwork that was done out of Southwest Research Institute. You've heard from a lot of the panelists that a lot of us came out of that. A lot of that groundwork capability was established there in the San Antonio region, and you're starting to see now the capabilities and the outgrowth of that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. So, robotics and automation, AI, autonomy, all of that is on the bleeding edge of technology and capability right now. And we're really starting to see San Antonio start to become established as a hub for that. That's going to draw technology here. Like Kris has mentioned, we're not quite at the level of a Silicon Valley or a Denver or a Pittsburgh yet, but we are currently headed there. And the partnerships that we're developing with other groups within Texas and around the world are starting to give us that exposure.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to contribute to that, to what Michael said?
I do want to chime in on one thing, because through my experience working at Southwest Research, I got to travel the world and see a lot of robotics hubs and see what they look like, and they're not all the same. And there's a reason that I'm very positive about San Antonio, is that our robotics hub is built on kind of commercial companies with commercially viable ideas, right? We're all businesses serving other businesses. We focus on the things, like Michael said, that are not these really sexy problems. They're kind of dull, dirty problems, but they're problems that need solutions. Stripping paint off of aircraft is certainly not the most interesting application of robotics, but it is a viable and potentially lucrative application of robotics. And the other hubs that I've been to around the world, they don't have that focus on viability. They're still focused on what's the sexy problem I can solve with robotics. And that's why I think San Antonio stands out among them. Is we're not a Silicon Valley or San Francisco robotics hub, but we have the ability to get there because we are getting the technology and the business side right.
Very cool. Well, I know we're getting close to time, and we have a couple of questions, but before I get to those questions, I just kind of want to close the loop on everything. And selfishly, I wanted to get you guys all together on a panel. We've been all working really hard for the past 2 years to develop these presentations and bring these programs and grow this community. So that was really one of the goals I had, is to create more awareness of the robotics community, which is not at this time widely known, but it is hugely represented. All of our meetups are very well attended. We've been having a great time. But secondly, we also want to start talking about, that San Antonio has these robotic services here in our city, and we want to start just making that known as well and start really driving that business. And then hopefully, maybe robotics can become one of San Antonio's key industries, such as cybersecurity or aerospace. So with that, got a couple questions. So the first question that I have is, how do you engage with the local universities/colleges to create that talent pipeline?
How do you want to respond, Stephanie? Do you mind if?
No, go ahead.
Matt, go ahead.
Jump in.
Thanks, everybody. I raised my hand and Stephanie just wasn't looking. Anyway, so obviously being at the large institute, right? I mean, we have the opportunity to both collaborate with a lot of universities and collaborate on programs, either via government funding opportunities. There's been obviously work via things like the CARES grant, a number of different initiatives. We've had over the years close working relationships with UTSA to the point where we've actually shared lab hardware. We've had a number of different interns from UTSA kind of work. We've hosted the robotics clubs from UTSA and maintain a close relationship with the professors that lead their robotics programs. And so we hope to continue that and offer opportunities for interns to sort of work and trying to set up programs where it's not just the summer. So commonly, the thought is like, oh, it's a summer internship, so they only come in the summer, but we've been looking at vehicles where we can almost have them work part-time, like any other part-time job that they would do, right? So we actively sort of try to recruit. We hope that our engagement with SATX Robotix also gets a little bit more exposure to the students interested in robotics, even if they're not, say, in a traditional robotics program. Because one thing we've seen in our group here at the Institute in my department is a great example of that, where not everyone has sort of this traditional robotics degree. Well, I have a material science degree, but that said, anyone can get involved. But we had a staff member who commonly said the robotics, getting into doing software for robotics was awesome because all he needed was a fairly decent computer and an internet connection, right? And that's that accessibility, and then like just putting our faces to the names and actively being engaged. We also try to host a lot of our open source events we do for the industrial facing work we do where often we can, either at UTSA or places the students can access. So that is our, we have a continuing cadence where we're engaging primarily initially with UTSA, and then obviously trying to grow that into the other universities. And eventually, ideally, right, we have mentors that sort of support the FIRST robotics programs as well, and to get down to high school, a little bit like what Shaun discussed. But for us, it's a real big deal to sort of be there and support, that talent pipeline, because we could also benefit from it. We're here in the community. We also believe it's just being a good community partner in supporting those institutions. So that's what we see as our role.
Very cool. There was a question about open source. So the question was, do you think open source is a security risk? The good guys do all the work, the bad guys get the code for free, and no one is responsible. No one to incarcerate, no one to sue. Perspectives?
I actually really like the responses already offered by Kris and Peter, but in lieu of sitting there typing feverishly, I will just offer a little echo what Kris comment, right? I mean, in the end, like it's a bin of parts. There's both two things that are positive about that. One, the parts, right, are easy to introspect because it is open source code, right? As opposed to like in a Windows world downloading, oh, it's a new version of Solitaire, right? Well, you don't really know what's in there because you can't introspect those sorts of packaged Windows programs, right? So you can introspect, and it is use at your own risk to a degree, right? So you have to be responsible. You have to do some due diligence. In the end, right, you're grabbing some parts, and then you're actually really doing the innovation. right? And it's really, you know, and that's our focus is. We want to provide some tools to enable people to be successful. If someone creates something totally awesome, ideally, right, we'd like to see people make contributions or fixes to what we have offered, but we don't expect really anything, right? As far as like, if you do something that's willfully, you know, let's just say harmful to somebody, there are vehicles to seek retribution, or people can get in trouble, and it is on a per incident basis, which I saw in the comment as well, right? I mean, we apply a license, we maintain copyright, right? So obviously, as long as, but it is use at your own risk. So if you do something that you shouldn't be doing, well, we obviously can't be held liable. But if there is something, for some reason, we had a rogue staff member that did something intentional, right, that could come back to them or even us, right? So, but that is on a per incident basis, and it's a well treaded, so to speak, space. But obviously, right, I mean, the intent we do is to keep our scope somewhat manageable, right? And in the pieces we pull in, right, introspect them carefully, but then still try to be good actors in the community. So we see this. Obviously, we're very interested in the cybersecurity movement. And that's another benefit to being in San Antonio. The recent announcement of, I think it's called SIMAN 2, our end users who want complete solutions, like the things that you hear Michael talk about and the systems Shaun delivered. You know, as they get more mobile and always on the network, they're like, hey, are these secure, right? So cybersecurity and secured systems are still of interest. You know, obviously what we're open sourcing are more just the bits and pieces to help people get started. In that case, it's, you know, we try to be as transparent as possible to enable, like, oh, I can check this out. But in the end, like, let's not conflate with, obviously, we're all interested and excited about the movement, particularly here in the region around cybersecurity.
Awesome, thank you. So we are about 10 minutes remaining, so we've got 2 more questions. The first one is, would love to hear from the panel about sensors use, and what the sensor developments would be. What would be the most interesting going forward? Oh, right. And that's to all the panelists, so whoever wants to take that one.
I will jump in if you don't mind.
Yes.
So that's a pretty open-ended question, because depending on the type of application you're working with, the types of sensors you might be interested could be totally different. So let me just give an example from one of my backgrounds. So for autonomous vehicles, there are sort of at least two sets of sensors that are interesting. You have positioning sensors, things like GPS, inertial measurement units, those sorts of things. And then you have the perception sensors. So you have cameras, you have LiDAR, you have radar. And in this domain, I mean, there's development across the board, and there's a lot of interest here. So one example there for LiDAR, there's been well over $1 billion. I mean, multi-billion dollars invested in a number of startups and more mature companies to develop cheaper, smaller, higher performance sensors. And so, I mean, there's active development here. And if you're not familiar with LiDAR, basically it's a 3D sensor. So you shoot out laser pulses and measure distances to objects. And that's what a lot of the vehicles that you might have heard about or seen on the roads, like Google or Waymo's self-driving vehicles, so on. But there's a tremendous amount of interest, not just in the sensor technology, which is constantly developing, but also in the interpretation. So basically the two sides here are, you know, what kind of novel sensors can be developed. And I think there's not quite enough time to dive into all of the interesting nuance there, but also on the other side, the interpretation, which has much more upside. I mean, what sorts of algorithms can you apply? What can you do with AI these days that you know, that up to now you couldn't do, or you couldn't get out of, or how can you extend the ability of you know, sensors with their existing limitations? So I know that didn't quite answer the whole question, but just a taste for now.
Thank you, Kris.
Yep.
I think we're probably going to have time for just one last question, and it's from our friend Iris Gonzalez. So the question is, when do we know San Antonio has reached a critical mass in its robotics community, and what are the criteria to do that?
May I try to answer that?
Please, please.
I heard a lot last hour, and it's all about critical mass at the end, and like a couple of speakers said already, they travel around the world and they see all kind of initiatives. When you really look at those initiatives and those industrial areas where robotics are main focal point, you see that there always is, at the end, there is a business. And the business is not there. You have no new money coming in, and you cannot introduce new ideas to universities because universities also need money to develop, and you need labs, and you need to work on things, and that's all costs money. And at the end, it comes down to, do we have business which makes money, and then can, from there on, there's a joint interest to develop new technology which can be used by the business, and the business can make money with that. That cycle needs to get up and running here. And as long as the cycle is not up and running, and there's only a couple of companies making robots and introduce that to the market and make money with it, you will not have a lot of cycle there. I think that like One Robotics and other companies here and Xyrec, we will give a huge push here. And that's my aim, to give a huge push here. Is it today? No, it's not today. We are introducing our first robot to the market as we speak. We need to build a lot of them to make a lot of money, but it comes back to the community here at the end. And by that, we're getting a real critical mass running, and all the people here in this hour, we need all those people to run all the elements of that cycle, from consultancy, from education point of view, from R&D point of view, and from business point of view. We know that the business in the center here to create jobs, create new work, and then we are getting the cycle going on. And I believe we are in a good starting point for that. So let's do this every year and measure ourselves coming year how we have done this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. Does anybody else have an answer for that question before we kind of sign off?
I think Peter gave a great answer.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, well, thank you guys again so much for joining us, and it's been really great working with you guys over the last 2 years, and really appreciate everybody who's tuned in today. And if you're interested in joining our meetup group, it's just through the meetup site. It's SATX Robotix, and that's with an X. So SATX Robotix meetupgroup.com, and join us. We'll have some great presentations coming up. And I think Peter said we can use his facility once we're all able to gather again together. So thank you everyone who tuned in today, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Stephanie, for organizing.